Hi, and welcome to The Bright Balloon, a podcast where I'm sharing bright ideas for your balloon business. My name is Sarah Meyer, and I'm a balloon business owner like you, and I love the creative side of what I do, but I really love the business side, which seems to be the part where most people struggle. So I'm here to help. Each week, I'm bringing you an episode full of bite-sized tips you can use to make improvements in your business. I want you to make more money, eliminate stress, and learn along with me as we grow our creative businesses together. Welcome to The Bright Balloon, presented by 17 Hats. Hello and welcome to this episode. When you owe $22,000 in taxes at the end of the year, even after paying quarterly, that is a good time to start reevaluating some of your business processes. And that's exactly what happened to me. Even after paying quarterly, I owed so much money to the IRS at the end of the year. I was in a panic, and luckily the Fiores, who are the owners of Fiore Tax Services, and Elizabeth, who is today's guest on the show, helped me get that number down, and then spent the next year helping me change my business to an S Corp. So I am now filing taxes in a new way, and it has its advantages and its disadvantages, but I didn't owe anything at the end of this year for the first time in a decade. In fact, I got a return. So changing the way that I filed my taxes had a huge impact on my business, and I think it might help some of you as well. So this episode is brought to you by Premium Conwind. This is our throwback episode, and there is no one I'd rather catch up with about this topic than Elizabeth Fiore, who is one of the owners of Fiore Tax Services, my bookkeeper, my accountant, my tax preparer, and they walked me through this entire process of switching from filing as an LLC to filing as an S Corp. And like I said, it saved me thousands and thousands of dollars. So this has advantages. It also has disadvantages. And Elizabeth does a great job outlining what those are in this episode, and if this might be a strategy that you are ready to consider in your small business. So let's take a quick break and head over to the UGlue hotline and then get into all things S Corp with Elizabeth Fiore. Welcome to the UGlue hotline, where we discuss great advice that sticks. Brought to you by ProTapes. If you have a question or some great advice to share, click the link in the show notes to call in and leave a voicemail.
Hi, my name is Denise Seymour. I am from My Little Balloon Company in Modesto, California. I'm starting my 40th year in business. Yay, close to retirement. So my suggestion for today is the binder clips and the clamps that you use to hold your design to the walls and framing. I would like to encourage you to take a few minutes and spray paint those white or the color of the balloon design so that they are not just black clamps attached to the wall. The binder clips are black, so they could all be painted. And the clamps, they usually have like orange handles on them or something bright. What I would like for you to do is paint those, but remember that it takes at least 48 hours for the paint to dry on the plastic. It's not a fast drying process. How I do it is I attach them to a 3-foot, 1/2-inch EMT. That way I can spray from all different angles while I'm holding it in my hand. And then I place it in a balloon stand to dry. I hope that helps somebody to look more professional, and it helps where you do not see those unsightly black binder clips and clamps on your design. Have a good day.
ProTapes is a leading manufacturer of specialty tape products like ProGaff, Pro Artist Tape, and our favorite balloon tape, UGlue, which helps you create amazing balloon arrangements and decorations in less time. You can save 5% on UGlue when you buy directly from Having a Party using code BRIGHT at checkout. Welcome to this episode, Elizabeth Fiore from Fiore Tax Services. We are talking about all things S Corp today. And if you're like me, you have no idea what that meant. A year ago, I had no idea what that was. And here we are on the other side of quite a journey. We will talk about that in the episode. But before we get into the nitty gritty, give us an introduction. Who are you?
Hi, thank you for having me again. My name is Elizabeth Fiore. I'm with Fiore Accounting and Tax Services. We work with balloon business owners all over the country on the bookkeeping side, the tax side, payroll, all things finances. And S Corp is definitely one of the questions that we get asked the most. There's generally whisperings of, should I be an S Corp? What is an S Corp? Is this for me? Is this not right for me? So I'm glad that we're touching on this topic because I think it's a very important one and it can be really helpful.
Yeah. And even if someone is not to the point where they should switch over to become an S Corp, you can help them. So, what are some of the services that you do for balloon people? Just so people listening kind of understand what they can utilize you for.
Yeah, absolutely. So we kind of do the whole gamut, right? So we do consulting. So if you just need kind of some one-off assistance to get some things in order, we do that. We do monthly bookkeeping. We do sales tax, annual tax filings, payroll, all the things.
Well, and that's what I like about you because I think traditional bookkeepers, they're not going to do your taxes. So they're not going to walk you through this process, which is directly related to taxes. So last year, I got the fun email that I owed $22,000 in taxes. So my soul left my body. We fixed it a little bit. We got it down a little, but it was still a lot. And that's when you and I started talking and you were like, I think it's probably time for you to switch over to becoming an S Corp. And there's a lot of savings, a lot of substantial savings. And real quick, my last general question, which we may have talked about in your previous episodes, but how did you get into balloon specific accounting?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it was just happenstance, right? So we worked with small business owners and then we were introduced by someone local to us as a balloon artist. Linda Perry, thank you. Give her a shout out. She introduced us to Joette at Balloon Coach. And she was like, hey, can you come and, do some webinars for us and just kind of explain some topics? And I was like, yeah, of course. And then we just started like one after the other working with balloon artists. And it really became kind of a perfect match because we were very knowledgeable in the product-based world and kind of all of the creative side and pricing. And a lot of those things were in my wheelhouse from previous lives of different work. And then we just ended up loving working with balloon artists. So it was just like the perfect fit. So here we are.
What percentage of your business are we? Because I know you don't do only balloons, but are we a good chunk?
Right. Oh, yeah. So I would say, and of course that changes all the time, but I would say roughly 75% of our clients are balloon business owners.
Wow. I didn't know it was that high. I was thinking maybe 50-50, but that's great. Yeah. You guys are like, you're like in now. You're balloon people. Like you are at Float. You go to Summit every year. Yeah. You like, do you ever get your hands dirty? Do you ever pick up the balloons? You're like, I can do this.
So I love being like crafty and creative. So sometimes I will try to make stuff at home for our girls. It never looks nearly as good as what you guys do, but I do enjoy it.
Yeah, no, I think that's important. I love not having to explain like the nuances of a garland or the profits or what, like you guys just kind of know that. So it's good. I don't have to like catch you up on anything. I can see a regular bookkeeper being like, now what? I don't understand like this overhead or this item description. Like, what is this? You just like, no, you even like know 17 hats. So that's an added bonus because you know my CRM as well.
I will say also, because we get a lot of folks that come to us and are like, my business is not very large. It's not very complex. And I will say the complexity of your like bookkeeping and your books is not always directly related to necessarily how much you're bringing in an annual revenue. So just by the fact of, and this might be helpful if somebody's looking for a bookkeeper as they're, talking to them, just the fact that you have a CRM, that you have possibly different payment processors like Stripe, Square, PayPal, the more different ways you have of accepting money, it becomes really complex. And not everyone is super familiar with 17 hats or Stripe or that kind of thing. And so we've seen where it gets really crazy very quickly if that's not the world that you play in very often. So yeah, I think that ends up being kind of our sweet spot is that we know those systems and we know kind of how you're utilizing them and all that good stuff.
Yeah. And then you add like contractors and 1099s, all that stuff in there. Yeah, it does get, even though it could just be you working at a home-based business, that's when I finally
Totally.
gave up. I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, this shouldn't be that hard. It's money in and money out. But it got
Right.
really, really confusing. So I have been glad to hand it over to you. All right, let's take a quick break and then let's get into details of an S Corp. What the heck are these things? Hang tight. Are you ready to take your balloon business to the next level? Look no further than Having a Party Wholesale, your ultimate destination for all things balloons. Having a Party Wholesale is on the cutting edge of new products that will wow your clients, from top brands like Tuftex, Jamar, Anagram, Ellie's, Sempertex, Premium Conwin, and introducing Brookloon, a new balloon line created by the Having a Party family. They've got the widest selection to fuel your creativity. Join the successful league of professional balloon artists who shop at havingaparty.com. All right, welcome back. S Corps, what are they? I am one. I file as one. I don't even know what they technically are designated as. Like, what are they? Give us the spiel.
Yeah. So at the risk of putting everyone to sleep, I'm going to get a little bit technical for a second, but essentially what you're doing when you elect to be taxed as an S Corp is you already have an LLC and the S Corp sits on top of that. So it's really a tax election that you're making with the IRS and with your state. It doesn't change the legal entity that you have. So if you are an LLC, you stay an LLC for legal purposes, and then you are also an S Corp if you elect that for tax purposes. So you kind of get the best of both worlds, right? You get the legal protection.
That's the part I didn't get for so long. I was like, I'm an S Corp now. And I was like, what does that mean? I was like, I don't know. I am one. Like, I've become an S Corp. Like,
I've grown into a beautiful S Corp
I was
butterfly.
Like, I don't freaking know. And then when I started getting paperwork, I was confused because it was like, which one of these are you? Are you an LLC? Are you a corporation? And I was like, well, I don't actually know. I'm an S Corp. And it was like, that's not an option. So that is important. You remain an LLC. You are filing as an S Corp, which gives you advantages.
Exactly. And so essentially what you're saying when you elect to be taxed as an S Corp is that you are going to actually pay yourself. So you adopt new rules when it comes to your taxes, right? Which can be really beneficial because now you are no longer an employee or self-employed. You are now an employee of your business. So as a single member LLC or even a multi-member LLC, you are not an employee of your business. You're self-employed, whatever you have in your net income. So after expenses, that's what you get taxed on, whether or not you put it into your pocket. It just is all kind of one big bucket, right?
Right.
When you become an S Corp, you're saying, actually, I am no longer self-employed. I'm an employee of my business. And so now I'm going to have payroll, a salary or hourly wage. And then I'm also going to be a shareholder of this S Corp. So I get additional income beyond what's paid to me in a paycheck. So that really becomes the distinction is you lose some of the benefits of being self-employed and you kind of have to recoup them in a different way. But the biggest takeaway I will say is electing S Corp sounds really good, right? When you're looking at the numbers, you're like, of course, why wouldn't I do this? Like, it makes perfect sense. It doesn't always make sense if you have to spend the same amount of money in all of the compliance that you have to do.
Yeah, it's like a teeter-totter, right? It's like,
correct.
It's like, oh, I'm going to save all this money by filing as an S Corp, but I'm going to spend money to have payroll software and on payroll taxes. And like, that was my biggest struggle getting my head around it. Cause I was like, this feels like so much work and energy for one person. Like, it's me. I'm the only person on payroll. Like, this is so ridiculous. And then when it was like, oh, also Gusto, which is the payroll software, that costs money. Also, there's taxes taken out. Also, there's this fee. And it's like, well, what the heck? But it's like you're spending money in different ways, which is why you're going to talk about who should do this. Because it's not everyone. If you're just starting your business, you should not elect an S Corp, right?
Correct.
But it's okay. Am I getting this right? Because this is how I explain it to people now. So correct me if I'm wrong. But before, when I was an LLC, all the money I made was taxable income. It was all mine, right? Now, all the money I, air quotes, pay myself, that is an expense. So that is not taxed the same way, correct?
Correct.
So it's brought my taxable income way, way, way down because I got to the point where I was making enough money and it was like, okay, now pay $22,000 in taxes on all of this income versus now it's almost kind of scary. I look at my income statements from you and I'm having to like adjust because it looks like I've made hardly anything, but that's because my payroll has been deducted from it. Is that right? Okay.
That's exactly right. Right. And so you still are going to be paying in payroll taxes, just like if you would if you had a regular job, somewhere else where where you pay taxes out of your paycheck and then your employer also pays taxes on your behalf, right? So here it's the same exact thought process. So it's not like you're just not paying these taxes. It just goes into a different bucket. It's viewed differently and you actually get to lower your overall taxable income. So for a lot of people, it can be really beneficial. For some people, the amount of compliance that you have to do as an S Corp is either not worth it to them in terms of the tax savings, like they may not be getting enough tax savings for it to be worth it, which is reasonable, or they may not qualify based on, specific things that you have to qualify to be an S Corp. But typically, I don't recommend people even start thinking about whether they should or shouldn't become an S Corp until they have roughly $60,000 in net income. So you have your revenue minus expenses, that gives you your net income. So whatever you have after your deductible expenses, that's your net. And that number should be around 60,000 for the year.
Okay. So that's kind of that teeter-totter. That's where it starts like tipping. Okay, cool. Let's pause. Let's take a quick break. Let's talk more about that. I want to talk about who and how right after the break, because you just hit on that $60,000. There's a couple more things to it. And then like I learned, it's not an overnight process. So we'll talk about the how when we get back.
Are you looking to grow grab-and-go sales? At Balloon Suite, we have the expertise you need to know how to grow your own grab-and-go market. We also have a really easy-to-use checkout flow for your customers that brings those orders right to a dashboard that you can easily use to know exactly what you need to create today, tomorrow, next week, or whenever that customer schedules their pickup or delivery. You can learn more about Balloon Suite and check out our plans at balloonsuite.com.
All right, welcome back. You touched on who. This is not for everybody. This is probably something that people maybe want to work towards. I probably waited a little too long. I probably waited a year or two too long to switch, like I maybe would have benefited, but I like that rule of thumb you just gave us before the break. 60,000 in net income is where the scales kind of start tipping. Are there any other indicators that make this right for people?
Yeah. So you also have to be a resident or citizen of the United States. So not everyone qualifies for that, as one of the guidelines. And you have to, it is mandated by the IRS that you pay yourself a reasonable salary. So one of the things is that depends on how much money your business is making, but you have to pay yourself. And so sometimes we get into kind of this little gap where we say, okay, maybe your business is making a decent amount of net income, but the consistency is not quite there, right? So your business has fluctuated quite a bit in the last couple of years. We may not know that you're going to continue to make 60,000 plus in net income year over year, right?
Okay.
So you're making this election and next year might be significantly different and your savings may just not be there.
Can you go back? Can you switch back to an LLC? You can't. Okay. I remember hearing that. So it's a forever decision.
Correct. And you have to meet the requirements. If you don't meet the requirements for 3 years, you can actually get your S Corp election revoked.
Okay.
And then you don't actually go back to being a normal LLC. You have to become a C corporation.
You're like
which is like
you're on like probation. Oh no.
Correct.
So, but like,
it's what happens? Other thing.
What happens if like, okay, COVID? Like, what happens if I was making the $60,000 and now I'm like literally making nothing? Like, what do I actually do?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in that case, based on your income, you can reduce your salary that you're paying yourself in payrolls to accommodate your new normal,
Okay.
but you still have to incur a lot of those other costs that just are there by the nature of being an S corp, right? So you still have a separate tax filing that you have to do. You still have payroll, even if it's minimal for yourself, so you're still paying that.
Yeah, right. If you could like pay yourself less than it costs to have payroll run, that's crazy.
Right. Yeah. If your income has kind of wild swings, those savings really might be gone or just be non-existent. You might like break even with the savings, or you might actually pay more to be an S corp.
Now you're scaring me. Maybe I shouldn't have done it.
Now you're good.
No, I know it's good because this is the first year in ever, I think, as long as I've been using you for sure. This is the first year I got a refund. And I would imagine it's largely because of
It
this.
is. It is. Your situation would look completely different without the S corp election.
Yeah.
And when we talked about it, I was very transparent in that this is one of those things where it is not everyone wants to become an S corp, and not everyone should become an S corp, because it is a commitment that you're making to kind of be in this new area when it comes to the IRS. So sometimes I feel like I sound like I'm talking people out of becoming an S corp, and it's really not. I just want to make sure people are aware it's not a, quick save $10,000 on your taxes. Like, it really isn't that, but it can save you a ton of money in the end. It can also cost you money. So
yeah. No, I think that's good to know, because I feel like I don't know how to explain myself. I feel like I need enough information, or I need someone who knows all the information like you to just tell me what to do. Otherwise, if I had to research and do all this myself, I never would have switched, but it would have cost me a lot of money. So I guess that's why I pay you guys to know how to do this. I would never have done it by myself. Speaking of which, like, it wasn't easy. It's okay. Here's something too that one of my friends mentioned. She went to file her taxes, and it was just like, I'd like to file as an S corp, and she just like checked the box and like sent her stuff in, and then the IRS was like, no, you have to do it. So in case people see that as an option and they're like, oh, that sounds great, like, you have to actually establish yourself as that first. And that took me, like 9 months. It was probably just a special situation. Wisconsin is particularly terrible when it comes to this stuff, but it was kind of a tricky process. Like, can you give us kind of an overview of what needs to happen to make this official change?
Yeah, that's a great segue. So and I try to tell people upfront, it is a painful process. It just is, especially when you're doing it in hindsight, right? So one of the things that we worked together was so that you could be an S corp for 2023. And we made that election during 2023. And so that presents more challenges, but it also gives us an opportunity to look at what the actual net income is looking like for the year, right? So then we can make a decision a little bit more informed of like, okay, you're clearly on a specific path, and this is the right decision for you. Let's move forward with doing all of the process. So that process, start to finish, I would say smoothest best case scenario takes roughly 6 months. And in particular, because you didn't have payroll before that, right? So we had to look at establishing a lot of those things, and you on your end as well, establishing a lot of those things from scratch. So that takes time. You have to become an employer in your state. You have to, get unemployment insurance. You have to possibly get workman's comp, depending on the situation. So it just adds up in terms of how long it takes and how complex it is. So one of the things that I think makes it easier to transition to becoming an S corp is if you already have employees, right? If you already have employees, you've already done a lot of those things, right? You're already established as an employer in your state. You already have payroll set up, hopefully. You already are doing a lot of the things. And so it's just a matter of integrating you into that process.
Okay. Right. But you're just becoming an employee. Gotcha.
Correct.
Like, I had none of that. And some of it is like chicken and the egg. It's like, in order to set up payroll, I had to have workman's comp. But in order to have workman's comp, I had to have employees. But I didn't have employees because I didn't like... There was all this stuff where it was like, even Gusto, which is the payroll software that you got me set up with, things that should have been easy, like, hey, enter this number and we'll look it up in the system. And I was like, well, I don't have that number because I'm not in the system because I don't have employees. Like, I see
Right.
what you're saying, that a lot of these things would have already been done. And I think in my case, we ran into a couple extra hiccups. Like, one of the things I can't even remember, but like I had to call and they were like, oh, you've been paying tax on an old LLC or so. I don't even remember,
Yeah.
but it was so bizarre. It was like when I changed from a sole proprietorship to an
Yes, that's what it
LLC,
was.
they didn't like mark that down. So my taxes were being paid under a sole proprietorship, which I was like, but you're the people who made me an LLC. Why would you not have documented it? Like, there were
It was
added layers.
wild.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
made
it was
it
wild.
super unfun. And I 100% would not have followed through if you guys were not holding my hand.
Yeah. I was like, don't hate me. It will be worth it in the end.
Yes, it was. I mean, I think it would have been harder if like last year I owed $1,000 on taxes and
Right.
this year I owed $800. I would have been like, this sucks. But 22,000 to getting a refund, I mean, like, however you look at it, that's a huge swing. So it's like the difference of like an annual salary at my last job that I just quit. So it's a
Yeah.
lot.
And I feel like we need one of those disclaimers, like results may vary.
Yeah.
Like-
Yeah. 100%.
So just because you elect to become an S corp doesn't mean that you're going to have savings of, $20,000. But if you are around that $60,000 mark, there is a very good chance that you will save a decent amount of money.
And my kind
But
of like
course,
hack, because, I never like to do like full actual research. Just the last year when I was at events, I just asked other people if they were an S Corp. And the people who were kind of like me or a little, I'm just gonna say better, like they had a little bit larger businesses or they were doing a little bit more in sales or they had a few more employees. I was asking them and they all were like, oh yeah, we're S Corps. And I was like, okay, good. I'm on the right track. Then. I think if they had all been like, no, what are you talking about? Then I would have all of a sudden, sensed some red flags. So I think when in doubt, just like ask around, like ask other people if they are. And if you're thinking about making some change to your business and no one that is like a role model to you is doing that thing, then that's my red flag. But everyone that I kind of look up to was like, oh yeah, I'm an S Corp. And also, yeah, it sounds like you're probably at that stage where you'd want to switch. So that's just kind of how I felt better about it.
Yeah. And I think that's a great point. Looking slightly above kind of where you are, I think is really helpful too. And then also having an idea of kind of where you want to take your business, right? So if you're doing this along with a full-time job, if you are like, no, I'm in this, I want to quit my job and do this full-time, or you already have employees and you are already doing it full-time, all of those goals are going to be slightly different, right? And so all of those needs will be slightly different. There are plenty of times where we run kind of the numbers and the S Corp scenario versus an LLC. And based on that person's individual tax situation, it doesn't make sense. They won't save any money, right? So it is important to know that your situation may not be exactly like somebody else's, and also what your plans are for the future. If you're like, I want to grow this business to the biggest it can be, you likely will become an S Corp at some point down the road, just because of the nature of your goals.
Yeah, neat. Well, cool. Yeah, I don't want to say it's not scary. It feels scary, especially because it's like there's no going back and now there's payroll and but now on the other side of it, I can't say it's really like changed my day to day. Like the biggest factor that I think confused me, I'm a big fan of like profit first. I know you guys are too. A lot of balloon people use this cash flow system and that kind of screwed things up for me because before it was like, I'm going to take 50% of every dollar and then that's mine. And after the S Corp with payroll involved, I was like, well, when's it mine? And like, where does the money go? And like, how do I like not run out? Like, how do I know that I have enough to pay myself on payroll? And I kind of got over that because now I just have like a holding account, basically a payroll account. So as long as there's money in there, I know the payroll is going to go through. And that's just kind of what used to be my owner's account. So I'm still giving myself 50% of every dollar. And what's happening is that holding account is now just like growing and growing and growing. So I can see that I'm like ahead of the game. I basically have like a payroll runway, if that makes sense. But that was a big sticking point for me. I was like, I don't understand. Like, can I just take the money? Do I have to run it through payroll? And there's some specifics about that. Let's actually take one more break and then talk about how we get paid and a couple more differences between this and an LLC. So we'll be right back. Hey listeners, before we wrap up today's episode, let's talk about our fantastic sponsor, the Balloon Guild. Do you ever see amazing balloon decor online and wonder, how did they make that? The Balloon Guild is revolutionizing the industry by standardizing recipes, SOPs, and offering unparalleled training. Their mission? To elevate balloon artists worldwide, ensuring efficiency, profitability, and unparalleled professionalism. For business owners and their teams, the Balloon Guild isn't just a resource, it's a game changer for growth and development. For me, it's been the ultimate shortcut in finally getting things out of my head and onto paper, so I'm not making things up on the fly, and so my team can work together to create consistent, fast decor. Visit their platform today at theballoonguild.com or by using the link in the show notes. New recipes and resources are released every month. Okay, welcome back. The money. That's the biggest thing here. Like, how do I get my money? So with an LLC, you have just like a lot of freedom. It's basically just like people pay you money and it's yours. And then that's why you pay quarterly and then at the end of the year, right? You are paying your 100%. Taxes. With the S Corp, they take the taxes first because it runs through payroll. And that's how, the taxes come out. So you're essentially paying the same thing just at different times. But for me, it screwed up my whole cash flow system. And in addition to payroll, you can take distributions. Is that what it's called?
That's right.
Okay.
That's
so tell me, how does this, asking for a friend, because I totally understand it. But how do you do that? How do you pay yourself regularly? And then how do you actually take those distributions? Like, how do you get your money?
Yeah, that's probably the biggest challenge of people doing profit first, going from LLC to S Corp. So you're not alone there. I think that is a universal challenge. So typically what we recommend is there's two options, right? If you are the only employee, then you can just essentially convert your owner's pay account into your payroll account. If you have a ton of employees, then sometimes we say, okay, just go ahead and create a separate payroll bank account and kind of funnel some of what would have been into owner's pay into that account, and then the rest can stay in owner's pay. So a little bit of a daisy chain system, if you will, depending on...
Because I used to pay, if people are listening and don't do profit first, this might sound like a foreign language, but I have a few accounts. So I have my owner's pay, which is like 50% of every dollar that comes in. My operating, I think I'm at 35%. And then I have taxes, which is 15. So those are kind of my holding accounts. Ironically, I eliminated my profit account, which is the whole point of profit first, but I just like lump that in with my owner's pay. Like it's all mine anyway. So I chunk it in, but I pay I'm not going to say employees, but I have like contractors and a virtual assistant or like people that I pay regularly. I pay them out of my operating account. But then that's where I got confused because I was like, well, if I'm paying myself through payroll and these other people through operating, am I doing it wrong? Or like, how do I know where the money is? And so that's why it gets confusing.
Yeah.
But you're 100%. Saying the owner's pay should just essentially be payroll and maybe kick in more. So it's going to be like, instead of 35% for operating, you're going to bump that up or down?
Bump it up. So if it's just payroll, then you're going to look at, well, what your regular payroll expenses look like and, for your business,
right?
If you have other employees. And so you're going to take essentially that percentage and put that into a separate payroll account. So that percentage could vary, right? Mm-hmm. It could be around 30 to 35%. And then the other amounts that you would have paid yourself in owner's pay, you can still keep that in owner's pay, and that can essentially become your distribution.
Oh, okay, interesting. So you're paying yourself from two accounts, essentially?
Correct. Exactly.
Interesting. Okay.
So with S Corp, you get the benefit of being able to take money out in a paycheck, and you can also take distributions. So as a regular LLC, you only take distributions. You're actually not allowed at all to be on payroll. And so those distributions are taxed differently than payroll, which is why we always like to have kind of a mix of both so that you get the best tax position. And I won't go into all the details of like what percentage of this and all that, but typically we look at your entire compensation as the business owner, like what you're taking out in payroll, if your spouse is working with you, what they're taking out, what you're netting in the business. And we look at all of those to inform what percentages of each you should be taking and how much you should be paying yourself. But the benefit of doing that is essentially you're just by having payroll and the distributions, you're able to save on self-employment taxes as well.
Okay. So then so like what I just talked about, I have that kind of or that owner's pay account, and there's a little bit of like a nest egg kind of growing in there. So if I want to take a chunk out, say I want to take out like $5,000 as my distribution, do I just transfer it into my checking account?
Yep, that's exactly right.
Okay. And then I would just tell you on our monthly statements, like, hey, that was mine. That was a distribution.
Right.
See,
exactly.
That's a bonus of having someone do it for you. You don't have to figure out how to like classify it. I just make a mess of everything. I'm like, they'll figure it out. I feel like half of my transactions every month, I'm like, oops, that was personal. Oops, I just Apple Paid on Instagram. Sorry, I just ordered myself some makeup. And you're like, Sarah, stop it. I try to keep things separate, but it is hard.
You do a good job.
Apple Pay is so tempting. And sometimes I'm like, whatever card it charged it to, it's fine. I want this thing now.
That and PayPal for most people, like
PayPal, yeah.
Incorrectly, linked to their business account. And they're like, oops, that was personal. Oops.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. That's me all the time. Okay, well, that doesn't sound too intimidating to take one of those distributions. I don't think I've done that yet. So I need to, again, because I'm scared. I'm like scared to do anything. So I just like leave it all there. And I'm like, it'll just sit there.
Grow. Yeah.
I know. That's one of my like safety blankets though. I like having a ridiculous amount of money saved up. It makes me feel good. But I also had a baby and have to pay some hospital bills. So I'm about to take one of my distributions.
Yeah. That's why I don't push you, because I'm like, I know she wants to see it in there, just even if it's for a short amount of time.
I'm a psycho. Well, is there a maximum? Can I do multiple of those distributions? Like, can I do multiple a quarter? Is it limited or it's just whatever?
You can take them whenever.
Okay.
So we prefer if when you're looking at your compensation, you have a plan for what you're going to take out, like overall over the course of the year, right? So you can say, okay, over the course of the year, I want to take out about 25,000 in distributions, and then you can stagger it weekly, monthly, quarterly, whatever works for you, versus just willy-nilly, right? When you take willy-nilly, it's easy to take more than what you should have taken out or less. So as long as you have a plan, really the cadence of it is whatever you need it to be.
Okay, cool. Well, the last thing I just want to mention is Gusto, which is kind of it's the payroll system, but it does a lot. Like there's a lot in there. And the thing that if you're like me and had no idea how to do payroll or any of this, you guys helped me get up and going. And then I put it on autopilot. So once you do the really uncomfortable switching over, I just basically said, I want to make this much a year. And then it just pays me that divided by the weeks that I get paid. So I actually just went in and upped it. So I increased my salary, and then it just magically will pay me what it's supposed to each month. So it deposits into just like my family checking account, which is actually kind of nice. So I think if people struggle with paying themselves, that's almost like an asset. Like I know a lot of people are like, I don't pay myself through my business. It's like, well, first of all, that's a whole different episode. But second of all, like this ensures that you are taking enough and you're taking it routinely, which I really like because all of our bills are on auto payment. And this just ensures that, our family checking account is being fed by my balloon business.
Such a good point. And honestly, the biggest thing with having a paycheck in your personal bank account is that it's yours. It is completely and fully yours. You don't have to think about, is this a deduction or not a deduction? Can I take this or can I not take this? Once it leaves your business bank account and is in your personal checking account, you can do with it whatever you want, right? You're no longer bound by the IRS business laws and all that good stuff. And there is a big comfort and kind of a lot of intangibles that come with that kind of security of being like, my business paid me a paycheck and it is in my bank account.
Yes. Yeah. I'm sure there's people listening who don't understand that idea of like, when is the money yours? But that is like my biggest struggle of like, no, but they're going to come back and want it. I'm going to owe, I'm going to need, like, I like when it transfers into my account and it's like, okay, this is mine. Plus, I think it helps. We basically have seasonal businesses. Some people don't. I live in a town where it's very seasonal. So I feel it even more. It's like, I would say 50% of my business is in May and June. Like, it's wild. The next couple of weeks, I'm going to have a heart attack. But like, I get paid for all of those summer events, all those graduations, everything I get paid in like the span of a month. So all of a sudden I have like $50,000 flowing into my bank account. It's really hard to manage that amount of money to like then last you through the winters where you have like 2 jobs a month. It's mentally exhausting too, because you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm going out of business because I have no work. The thing I like about kind of that holding account and then the payroll is like, I'm actually like ahead of the game. I can see like, oh, I can pay myself comfortably for X number of months and nothing, like my lifestyle doesn't need to change. Versus before, I felt like I had a bad habit of being like, I'm rich. And then I'd like spend everything. Well, not spend everything, but like I'd feel really comfortable. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh my gosh, we have no money. We have to start couponing. Like it felt like more of a swing versus now it's like, oh, the paycheck is going to come and that is what I'm living on, not all of this money that is either in my account or not. I don't know. Did that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. And I think that you touched on it beautifully. And even when you have employees besides yourself, I do recommend having that money in a separate account, because then you are funding payroll, right? So kind of not to get too off topic, but generally what a lot of business owners end up feeling when they establish payroll for themselves and for others is a big responsibility, right? Yes. Like now I'm 100%. Responsible for a paycheck for this person or for multiple people. And especially with seasonal businesses, that can be really overwhelming amount of responsibility. And so kind of putting money, like you said, to be ahead of the game into that account so that during the slow periods, you still have money in there, whether it's for yourself or employees, it can make the whole difference in terms of freaking out every July when like all of a sudden most balloon businesses are done with their busy season and haven't yet started possibly their next busy season. It can be the difference between like quitting or you keep going in your business because you're absolutely. Like, oh, I got this.
Yeah. And I think that kind of combined with Profit First, which I think, did we record an entire Profit First episode?
Yes.
I feel like we did. We'll link to that. Yeah, we'll link to that. So I won't do anything. Nicole will do it. We'll link to it in the show notes. So if you're not sure what Profit First is, I would say that cash flow system kind of combined with this now like double backup of having payroll has made me feel more secure about the future of paying myself, paying other people. Cause like you can see where you're at versus when you just start. And like you said at the very beginning, when everything's in one bucket, it's just very hard to know how you're doing. Like it's just, you don't know if you have enough to buy balloons, if you have enough to pay yourself, when you can get a van, like it's all just a big guess. So almost having some of these restrictions self-imposed has really helped me feel a bit more confident.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And also it gives you, sometimes having it all together gives you a false sense of security too.
100%. Yeah.
You do have maybe a large chunk, but it's like, oh, but taxes are in there and payroll is in there. And then all of a sudden, it's all gone because you've paid that out and you still have other things that you need to buy. So there are so many kind of intangible benefits to using Profit First as a cash flow. Not that, I feel like we turned it into a Profit First, but it goes really well with becoming an S Corp where you do have to budget a lot to pay payroll.
Yeah, absolutely. Payroll was the scariest thing for me. Like you said, it felt like real. It felt like I can't like just pretend anymore. Even though it's just me, I'm my only employee, but like, it just felt scary, but it's not that scary. And if people have questions, if they're not sure where they are kind of on that teeter-totter, or if they just need help, if they're like, oh, this sounds really great that Sarah has someone doing all this for her. Trust me, it is. It's worth it. Where can they find you?
Yeah. So you can go to our website, it's fioritaxservices.com. We have a form that you can fill out. We also have where you can schedule a strategy session with me, and I'll give Sarah the link so that you guys can get to that easily. And really what I like to do is I like to just chat with you and see where you're at and kind of what your needs are. And then we can go from there. So if I'm not the best option to help you, I will tell you that, and I'll try to help you find somebody who is a good option for you. And if we can help you, then yeah, yay, we love to help.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for helping me. It was a journey. We survived. All of us survived. But no, I appreciate it. And thanks for coming on to clarify and help all of us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is always fun.
All right. Thanks again. Thanks for listening. As usual, I tried to keep it bright and light. Our presenting sponsor is 17 Hats, the CRM I use to cut the chaos and manage my entire balloon business. From the lead capture form on my website to workflows and email templates, invoicing and grab-and-go garland automated bookings, it's all powered by 17 Hats, the best customer relationship management system for balloon businesses. There's even a 50% off coupon code waiting for you in the show notes wherever you're listening. I'll see you next week in another episode.